Hello, good afternoon. Michael Winn, Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, the division of RB Oppenheim Associates. Today, I'm joined by Katie Lilly from Lillyfield Accounting Solutions.
Hello.
Once again, our Friday episode on the book Traction by Gino Wickman. Thank you, Gino, for supplying us with an incredible resource to help us get a grip on our business before it gets a grip on us.
That's right.
Katie, this chapter is brutal.
And so long.
Oh, it's brutal. It not only is it long, but it really just gets to where the rubber meets the road. I want to start off first of all by just saying that really this whole thing is about accountability, and then it really dives into all these meetings.
Right.
You know, and there's been book after book after book written about meetings, death by meetings, and like all these different, books and like there's a whole genre of books just for this. But, the more you start to think about this, you start to see a pattern emerge where things again have been built on top of, and there's these little, it's like these gears, and now they're fitting very nicely together. So one of the things that I kind of just write off in the first part of the chapter, something that really struck me was when it comes to accountability and discipline within an organization, when you try to implement that, it makes people uncomfortable.
True. Yes.
We don't want to be held accountable for anything.
Right.
We would just like to have this, kumbaya, organic, let whatever happens. And at the end of the day, that is not how your business is going to succeed. It can't happen that way.
Right. And it reminds me of a previous chapter, a previous podcast episode that we had where I was just struck by the comment, what gets watched improves. Mm-hmm. Remember that? What gets watched improves. Mm-hmm. And this chapter
what gets measured.
Right. What gets measured. Yeah, I think it was a scorecard. It was the scorecard chapter.
Right.
And what gets watched improves. And this is the actual practical application of that, because you're meeting as a team, you're coming together as a team, and you're looking at, your different measurements and your rocks and what you said you were going to do and not do. And you're coming and you're seeing if those improvements are being made.
Yep.
By coming to that meeting. And really that's what this whole chapter is about, is getting the traction from all the things that we've been talking about up till now.
And he points out too that fear of creating this discomfort within the organization is why most businesses who fail to properly implement this EOS system, it's that fear that they're petrified that this stuff is going to dig up stuff that they don't want to deal with.
Right.
And it's going to cause people to be uncomfortable. And so they don't do it,
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's crazy. I love the before and after visuals too. Like, so you remember how he did the little thing where it was like, before Traction, it was chaos, lack of communication, no accountability, poor communication. And then after, it was accountability, communication, organization,
Kumbaya.
Traction, momentum. I like the thing I like about that list is going from, I can totally identify with just feeling like you're just caught in the day-to-day and you're just running in place.
Right.
That's what I feel like Traction is for me, is I've been running in place for the last 8 years. And yes, we've done some great stuff, but I want to see some momentum.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's, to me, I think why I'm so excited about what this chapter really breaks down. So, all right. So we kind of talked about what this chapter kind of setting it up, and then he dives right into the rocks, which is living in a 90-day world. And I think it's interesting because for most of the time, I think we live in a 7.5-hour world.
Or a 5-day world. Yeah.
Right? Like,
5-day work
week. We live in, what is the checklist I have to do today?
Yeah.
Like, that's where we live.
Which client is on fire today?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
So, I think that, he really sets up a nice visual when you understand that, when you go back and you look with your leadership team and you identify and you've spent the time and you've pulled out the 10 or 20 different big things, big issues, whether they are structural, whether they are, they're going to be big monumental things. Like for us, a project management tool, we're a lot of us do the same thing over and over, but we don't really necessarily have you
don't have it documented.
Well, I feel like the word documented is kind of 1980s in a way. I want it documented, but I want a system that is an implementation of that documentation.
Right.
And so with project management tools, like I can create a template that says, okay, the documentation says there are 12 steps to start a web project or digital marketing project or a publicity. And, not every client's the same, but there are some core structures that absolutely need to be done in a certain order, and can be done. And so having a system that can ensure that, as we bring on additional team members, they do it the same way, consistency, that's really fantastic. So for us, if I were to say, what are these 3 rocks? I think that project management software is one. Number 2 would be a CRM system. For 30 years, we've done business with over probably 200 plus customers over 3 decades, and so we've got a large group of people. And there's probably other businesses out there who are like me, who have hundreds, if not thousands of customers that they've done. And do they have any kind of regular ongoing communication that's not trying to sell, but that's trying to give value to them, you know? And then I think lastly is sort of that cloud infrastructure of, working in the cloud and being able to collaborate from the team, whether it's, accessing email or file storage or what have you, like those scale components. So for us, those are 3, those are the 90-day, that's the 90-day world we live in. But what's crazy is when you start to unpack each one of those things, you realize you're going to have to do some fundamental changes. You may have a vendor you've got to change with. You may have a bunch of documents or stuff like that you got to get scanned to get there, starts to really impact, which is why it's like, okay, I'm not going to solve this today, but I've got 90 days to get it done. So for you, what's the 90-day world? How's that sort of changed your thought process?
So what we did at our very first meeting is we all brought what our issues were. These are the things that are annoying us. And then we tried to distill from that list, like we all shared that list, and then we distilled from that list or kind of gave a point value to anything that we all kind of had the same exact thing. And those kind of naturally rose to the top. And so we just kind of discern, okay, because you're really not supposed to do more than 8 or 9 rocks in a quarter. So we naturally saw what kind of rose to the top, and then some either dropped off or we could bundle them up together. It was like we were all kind of saying the same thing about one core issue. And so then we came up with those and then assigned them out. But our big ones are IT infrastructure, security, just making sure we're all on the same page, because we grew so fast, and we had this person has this type of laptop and this person has this laptop, and just, what's our plan for laptops? Do we have a rotation on replacing laptops, staying up to date, staying current, and that kind of stuff, as well as antivirus and file sharing and all that. So that's our big one. Also hiring for the next big position. So that was another one that came out of that whole process of looking at the accountability chart, is really identifying that particular role. And then some other more standardizing things across some of our clients. So those are our big ones for our rocks. And then we have our rocks. I brought it here. We've got them listed.
Look at you.
It's super fancy and branded with the Lillyfield blues.
So he talks about an idea that there are company rocks and then there are personal rocks. So how's that really worked out for you guys?
So our rock lists are all company rocks, but then to us, the assigning it to a person makes it their personal rock.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he kind of puts that on there. Obviously, if you've got someone who's specifically in charge of HR, they're going to have a very, dedicated component of that rock,
right.
Et cetera. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that he talks about, which I think is the traps and the pitfalls of rocks. I think it's funny when you think about, like, you could spend time on something like as a rock or whatever that's actually taking you in the wrong direction.
Right. Or absolutely adding no value to what your goal is. So your rocks have to tie into that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goal. So really when you're going through that quarterly meeting and kind of figuring out what the rocks are, you really got to ask, okay, if we complete this or finish this task, how does that get us to where we're wanting to go? To really make sure you're on track there.
And I think the other thing too is the other thing he mentions is just getting overwhelmed by all the different things that need to be done.
Yes.
And then, just being completely, stressed out and worried that, you're ignoring something that is a problem, but you've chose these other things.
Yeah.
That
happened to me for sure. Something that was super important to me did not make the first cut of rocks.
Oh,
but
really?
It'll be on the second. But we could not do it until some of the things were already taken care of with the first. I mean, we just couldn't.
I totally understand that. I mean, you're right. And again, I think, you don't uncover that
right
until you go through that process and you figure out, well, we really cannot deal with this issue yet because there are other things that are in front of it.
Yeah.
That just,
Yeah. And it's super important, again, for you to have that leadership team that's coming together versus the owner taking all of the responsibility themselves, because the owner as an owner, you are naturally going to have blind spots. And so you've got to have that leadership team that comes in and says, no, I don't think we can do that yet because this is a bigger issue and this is why. And they may see, how it's playing out in a certain way that you're just not even, you're not necessarily down in the weeds seeing that.
Yep.
So, so it's good to have that feedback as long as you can keep that, somewhat under control and not everyone just going out on random tangents. But right. He kind of gets into that.
So when you move into the rest of the book, he really starts to set up this idea that you're going to have a series of meetings. You're going to have an annual meeting. You're going to have a quarterly meeting. You're going to have weekly meetings. And, just saying those words come out of my mouth is like, again, goes back to, meetings. Like, just historically, I'm not talking about for just like as a general, in my working career, I'm 48. I've worked for, basically 3-4 major corporations over that time period. And I've had some great meetings and I've had some real snooze fests.
Right.
And I think the one thing that I really liked was he was like, if you're going to have a meeting, he talks about level 10 meetings. And, yes, you'd love to have on a scale of 1 to 10, have every meeting be a 10. But he gives this, sort of in what does a level 10 meeting look like? And he talks about it should be passionate. It should be intense. It should be, it should be like exhausting and never boring.
Right.
And I'm like, what meetings are you having, buddy? But again, it's a refreshing, like rejuvenation when you're talking about. The one thing that I think is interesting, all the meetings, no matter if it's annual, quarterly, or weekly, it starts off with the segue.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's something that I think is really important. So in the segue, the 3 things that he talks about is, first of all, everyone in the meeting should quickly go around the room. This should take 5 minutes. And they should tell something, some good news about the business and their personal. Good news on both fronts.
Right.
Number 2, what's working and what's not working in the business. And then number 3, expectations for the day. Now, obviously, in the context of that, if you're having your annual meeting versus your quarterly, like the time frames and all that.
Right.
But starting the meetings with that, going around the room, I think is a great icebreaker. It's very like fast paced, like I envision. Obviously, we haven't fired one of these things off. You have. So
yes.
Talk to us about the reality of the segue.
All right. So we've had.
Do I have a romantic idea of it in my mind? A little bit.
Maybe. No, I don't doubt that we'll get there.
Okay.
We've only had 3 though.
Okay.
We've only had 3, and it's all female, so we tend to get off track, and we're like, oh, our kids are listen to what's happening. Oh, it's the end of the school year, Right. So I think we could do better on the segue.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting. It
is a good icebreaker. It is a good icebreaker. I do like that, and I do like hearing the good news, and I like hearing where everybody kind of is.
Yeah.
So I do like that.
Well, to me, it also goes back to core values and culture, and I think in an environment where you can talk about a personal win without getting into the weeds of that personal win.
Right.
I think it can be really great. It's almost like, if you're about to run a race and stretching, you know what I mean? Like everyone needs to stretch, and everyone needs to stretch the same length, the same time, the same count. Like, okay, we're going to stretch our arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like that, Yeah. And I think I keep getting this sort of analogy of a business, like our bodies. If we take care of our bodies, if we have regular checkups and we have the discipline to eat right and drink water and, are accountable to the fact that we want to live, till we're 95 or whatever, we're going to do things in order to get there. So why wouldn't a business or an organization not want to implement that same kind of checkup and sort of systematic status check of the business, know? So it's interesting. He doesn't put any kind of analogy in his book to that, but it's something that's kind of stuck in my mind. Right. About these businesses. The other thing that comes to my mind as we talk more about these meetings, he talks about, as I went through these, he calls it what's the meeting pulse? Like what's the rhythm? Like the dum dum, like when you listen to your pulse, right? It's got a sound, and I think that's part of understanding what a meeting should feel like and look like. That it's got a pulse, that it's got a rhythm, and it's not this kind of yo-yo thing that goes all over the place, right? So. He talks about, and I wanted to jump into the weekly, because for me, I know you've got to bring your leadership team through an annual, and then you got to go through a quarterly. Like you said, you've got to master the rocks before you can really, bring this thing to the whole team. Right. But getting together weekly. So if you've got your segue for 5 minutes, your scorecard for 5 minutes, your rock review for 5 minutes, your customer employee headlines 5 minutes, your to-dos 5 minutes, and then your IDS, which is identifying, discussing, and solving issues, right? 60 minutes, and then, kind of a conclusion, 5 minutes there. When you understand that, I think for me, the light really flipped on. And I hope for those of you who are following the story in the podcast video, this for me was really a light when I understood that what this really is about is taking time to stop working in the business and work on the business. Right. Just like myself, I'm spending a lot of time, doing and using my body, but I don't spend enough time working on my body. Right. So in the business sense, I think that was really just a light, really kind of hit. Like that's what traction is about, is a balance between working in the business and working on the business.
Yes. And it's been super helpful for me. Again, I know I've mentioned in previous podcasts that transitioning from a sole practitioner to this is Katie Lilly doing your books to this is a firm, having that meeting, having your rocks and having this weekly meeting where you're stepping out and you're looking at the business has really helped us create the firm. And it's not like, hey guys, I'm doing bookkeeping and I need you to solve the problems. You know, it's, hey, here's the Lillyfield way of doing things. This is how we do it here. And it really does help foster culture. If you are meeting on a weekly basis and you're keeping your goals in front of you and keeping your scorecard in front of you, it's really helping to create something bigger than just yourselves. Yeah. That everyone can buy into. And when you buy into something like that and you're excited about it, you enjoy your job more and things are going to naturally grow. So it's really just the act of coming together with a common purpose. And he gives you the meeting agenda. So, you know, we just, the woman that created or that leads our leadership team meeting, she created a whole binder for it. We've got the agenda. It's the same agenda every week. It's right in front of us. We don't have to think about it. And we just follow that. It's just the way we do it. Makes it a lot easier. Takes the burden off of what you were expressing. Oh, another meeting, you know? And so our next thing is really trying to stick to the time frames, the 5 minute. We are not good at that right now.
You know, the other thing about sort of going back to, you know, these meetings and rocks and the issues and, you know, the vision traction organizer, you know, I can remember you saying it. I've said it. I've got other colleagues that are in, you know, business colleagues who've said this multiple times. I need to hire someone else so that I can work on the business. That is bullshit.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. I was like, please.
That is not ever going to happen.
No, it'll never happen because you'll hire that person. You'll get X amount of more clients or more business because you've got capacity and you just keep going the same way with another person. Yeah. You know what I mean? More clients, another person, and you never take that time. Yeah, you really, you have to just take the time.
Right. I mean, you have to be an active participant in the rocks, the issues, and balance working on the business and working in the business. So there's not this utopian, you know, existence where we're going to hire the, you know, oracle wizard of whatever.
It's going to solve all the problems.
Solve all of our problems. You know, and again, I think that's a reality that here we are in chapter 8 of this book. And for me, it's just becoming clearer that that's not the answer. No. You know?
That's putting your power out there when your power's right here and the power's in those meetings, the power's coming together, the power's in the plan, and the power is in making the choice that you're going to work on the business. Even if it's just what I try to do is like, could I just do the first hour of every day is working on the business? And it's just making yourself do that, you know?
Yeah. It's a choice, definitely.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. It's what you want. It's, you know, I saw something about successful people versus unsuccessful people. There's no difference. The difference between the two is that the desire to achieve a different outcome, the desire is stronger in people who are successful. Like they have a desire. There's a fire, a spark, a passion that successful people have, that they're like, I'm not going to settle for this. Right. I'm just not, this is not going to happen. Like I'm done. I'm going to do something different.
I think we should challenge each other.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
5-day challenge.
5-day challenge.
And we'll report back next Friday.
All right. What's the challenge going to be?
We're going to take 30 minutes every day.
30 minutes. Okay.
To work on the business.
To work on the business.
and we're going to jot down what we did.
Done.
Can you do it?
100%.
When are you going to do it? First thing?
Oh yeah.
I think so too.
I get here.
I think
before,
I'm going to get here.
I get here before an hour and a half before anybody's here.
Yeah.
So it's so easy for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it too.
All right. We will check back in with you guys. So actually, that's actually a great segue. Again, this chapter was so great. It really talks about, again, just a recap, the rocks, which is living in a 90-day world, working on your 3 main issues, and setting that timeline to get it done. Because in any organization, lots of people like to bring up the stuff that's not working and no one does anything about it.
Right.
And so rocks are a way to stop that cycle of repetitive, nothing is happening, over and over, and get out of that rut so that you can have momentum. And then understanding that when you have meetings, there should be a pulse, there should be a rhythm in the meeting. And so he lays out, and he says in the book, there have been thousands of meetings that have taken place. The outline and the timeline that he's recommended is the most successful one based on thousands of meetings.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, I don't know. I've had all my meetings suck. So I'm willing to try anything. Right. So I'll give it a try.
Right.
So understanding that there's that rhythm, I think, is really important. And then the segue, I think, is, for me, that was what was really important, because it's again, it's a balance between knowing your coworkers and what they're working on in the job, but then also what's happening in their personal life without getting into the weeds, like you said, and going off on tangents.
Yeah.
And then understanding that the real work, the real results that come out of meetings are really going to come out of your IDS, which is that identify, discuss, and solve those things that you need to work on.
Right.
So great. All right. So that is going to wrap up chapter 8. Next Friday, we're going to wrap up
the book.
Wrap up the book. Yep, absolutely. We're going to start off with our week challenge, 5-day challenge. She and I are going to share what we got most out of spending 30 minutes a day. First thing.
You can do anything for 30 minutes.
Right?
Right.
I could take a nap. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Michael Winn. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, a division of RB Oppenheim Associates, joined by Katie Lilly from Lillyfield Accounting Solutions.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you guys for joining in. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.